Hello everyone and welcome back to the Star Wars Archives. Now it's been a while since my last video and I'll probably make a bit of a longer video soon about what my new plans are going to be for the channel, and they will start today with my review of Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn, which I actually read for the first time and it was a really enjoyable experience for me. And before I get into the review, I'll quickly just give a bit of context about what my experience is with Star Wars and the sort of Legends books. Now, when Disney bought Star Wars back in 2012, I was only about 11 years old, so I wasn't really old enough to have loads of money to be out buying loads of Legends books, and I don't really live in a big city, so my library wasn't really stocking them or anything like that. And by the time I was a little older, I didn't have like a canon superiority. I just only wanted to really know about the stuff that took place. So I didn't really have a poor knowledge of Legends, but like I hadn't sat there and read the books page to page, but I knew about the characters. I know about some of the events that take place in the Thrawn trilogy, for example, but I don't know, every way about how we get there. But in more recent years, I didn't fall out of touch with Star Wars, but not everything that's come out I've really enjoyed. But recently, as most people, I loved Andor Season 2, and I wanted to just kind of jump back into the universe as much as I can, hence coming back to the channel as well. And I really wanted just some more stories with Luke, Han, Leia, Lando and Chewie, to be honest, because for whatever reasons, which I won't go into too many, since Disney canon's been there, we haven't really had many. Definitely not on screen, and I was missing it. I was heavily into the Clone Wars and the prequel era as a kid, and I missed out on a lot of these stories other than the original trilogy, so I thought, you know what, forget it, I'm going to dive into the EU, and Heir to the Empire was a great place to start. Now, the first couple minutes here, I'm going to make a non-spoiler review, because I hopefully some people will see this who haven't read Heir to the Empire and maybe want to jump into the EU as well, and I wouldn't want to spoil the first book, as I think this is a great place to jump in. Also, I want to specify that I listened to the audiobook version on Audible, the full unabridged version, after I accidentally listened to half the abridged version and realised that this was not the full version. Despite this, I've got to say it was absolutely excellent. Mark Thompson was the name of the narrator. I believe he did every voice, and he nails it for pretty much everyone. Because it's an audiobook as well, you get that level of immersion where if R2-D2's whistling, or C3PO is talking, or Chewbacca is roaring, whatever it is, we'll get these sound effects from the movie, or TIE fighters blasting, or different music clips from wherever in the series, and it just helps elevate the whole experience. Not that I'm pushing anyone away from reading the book version, but if there's anyone like me who sometimes struggles to sit there and read through entire books, then the audiobook is a great way to do it. And I was instantly hooked. In the first chapter, I thought we'll start talking about Thrawn first, because obviously he's almost the main introduction in this book, and he's instantly commanding, and it hooks you in amazingly, and then just sticks with you the whole way throughout the book, to be honest. And then we get a pretty quick scene afterwards with Luke talking to Obi-Wan, and it just kind of helps immerse you back into the universe. It tells us a bit about where we are, it tells us 5 years have passed, it sets up where the story is going to take place, and it just sets up the tone for the rest of the book really well. And this goes for every single character in the book, to be honest. Zahn handles the original characters perfectly, in my opinion, so far. A lot better than they were done in the sequels. I felt like Han, Leia, Luke, everyone just was done justice in this. And it felt like natural evolution and progression for their characters from Return of the Jedi 5 years later. And of course, this isn't just about the original characters. Zahn writes new characters like Mara, Talon Card, and obviously Thrawn, who all feel like they belong in the Star Wars universe. And outside of the characters, the general feel of the entire book, I just really enjoyed the mystery, the world building. It reminded me really of the original trilogy. Like when we went to new planets, it felt like stepping on Bespin for the first time in The Empire Strikes Back. And the universe just has this mystical feeling, which I feel like we don't get too often in new Star Wars. So to be honest, I'd recommend Heir to the Empire to any Star Wars fan, but I'm going to be a bit specific. I'd say if you're feeling out of touch with Star Wars, whether that's just because there's some stuff that's come out which you haven't enjoyed, or maybe you feel like you've grown out of it, I'd say this is a great re-entry point. I'd also say if you're like me and you've been missing stories with the original trio of Han, Luke and Leia, this book absolutely fills that gap. And I'm assuming the rest of the books in this trilogy and the EU will continue to do that. I'd also say, similarly, like me, maybe if you grew up on the prequels and you missed out on the EU before Disney cancelled it, I'd say that it is definitely not too late to check it out. Because if you're looking for just genuine good stories, whether they took place in the canon universe or not, this is where you should be looking. So from here on out, that is where I'm going to stop with the no spoilers. So if you haven't read the book and you don't want any spoilers, please tune out here. And if I've encouraged you to read it, come back afterwards and leave a comment and let me know what you think. So for the spoiler section, I'm basically, for the start of it, just going to go throughout some of my favourite moments, kind of in order of how they took place in the book, just because that's the order I have them written down in my notes, and I suppose it makes the most sense. Now, I think for me, the highlight of the book was Thrawn, and specifically how he interacted with Jarius Sabayoth, who I also thought was an amazing part of the book. Particularly in their first meeting, Sabayoth, obviously, you know, he's a Jedi Master, or a Dark Jedi, and he thinks he's got all the power against this just Imperial Admiral. He's almost coming off with some kind of god complex, I'd say, which makes sense for just who he is. But throughout all of this, Thrawn doesn't really lose any control of the situation. And I love how he almost lets Sabayoth think that he's in control. He encourages him or agrees with him just so he can go along and help him with Thrawn's ultimate plan. And I just love how throughout the whole of the book, Thrawn is just shown to be so basically, you know, powerful and unstoppable, not because he's just, you know, strong in the Force, but because of his brain, basically. And obviously I knew that is how Thrawn works. I knew about that before he came into canon, and obviously canon's done it in its own way, but to be able to see how it exactly plays out in the book was really great for the first time. I'd also heard so much throughout the years about Mara Jade and how Luke Skywalker actually has a girlfriend, and seeing how their relationship has begun was also a highlight of the book to me. The instant tension and hatred that Luke feels, and that mystery he has on that he doesn't know how Mara feels this way about him. We share that with him. We also don't know, you know, until Mara reveals it to Luke, she's also revealing it to us. And when she does reveal that she was the Emperor's hand in the audiobook, the whole time Anakin's Dark Deeds is playing, and I'm sure the moment would have fit without it anyway, but it was a really, you know, it really hit you. It was quite an emotional moment. Also, like I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons I came back and started reading this book was because Andor had really brought me back into Star Wars, and there was, well, it's not a connection to Andor, but it was a sort of link. And that link was to do with Mon Mothma. There's a specific scene where Han is talking about Mon Mothma and how he had heard stories about her, or rumours about her, about how when she initially stood up to the Empire and broke out from Palpatine, and how he basically thought, you know, she was really brave for all of that. And it was kind of cool to read that after we had obviously seen her speech in Andor Season 2, and it just kind of just helped me remember how nice it was to see Mon Mothma actually, you know, be a really powerful character in, you know, Andor in a way we hadn't really seen her before. In Rogue One and Return of the Jedi, she'd only really just been standing around a table, to be honest. So it was nice to see her finally take the forefront. And I thought Genevieve O'Reilly was fantastic in the role. But back to Heir to the Empire, whilst I'm talking about links to other parts in the story or the universe, Zahn definitely leans into this nostalgia quite a lot. There's flashbacks that take place throughout the book to the original trilogy. Whenever, say, something similar happens, Luke will have a vision or a memory of a specific moment in the trilogy, and it does help, you know, remind us where we are, what world we're in. We get that sort of nostalgic callback to the original trilogy, which is a nice little feel. And it does happen quite often. I was worried it was going to seem like too much, but it isn't just fan service. Specifically, there's one point where Luke goes back to Dagobah and he thinks he's just going to be immune from having a dark side vision. Basically, he assumes he's too strong, or that he's got no fear now after, you know, Vader and Palpatine have died, so that it won't be able to affect him. But obviously he's wrong, and it was a nice moment to show that Luke has grown stronger, but he's not invincible. I did like another link back to the original trilogy in the Legacy of Vader, and how his actions are still standing 5 years, and I'm sure even later on past the Return of the Jedi. And this is in reference to how the Noghri respect him, and how it's revealed to us that Vader's basically manipulated this species to serve him. And there was a specific line in there somewhere where a member of the Noghri said that the Emperor would have never lied to Lord Vader, which I thought was quite a cool sort of, I don't know, just a line, or a link forward to the prequel trilogy where we see the Emperor absolutely would lie to Vader. All he does is lie to Vader and manipulate Vader ever since the prequels, all the way through the original trilogy and shows like Kenobi. All the Emperor does is lie to Vader, and it's cool that we get to see that even in this book. Later on in the book, we spend a lot of the second act and parts of the third act on this planet called Merca, which I thought was a pretty fun planet, to be honest. And I enjoyed the events that took place there, because we had Luke, and then we also have Han and Lando, and our new characters with Thrawn and Talon Card and Mara, and they all don't know each other there, and they're just missing each other. And it all leads to when Han and Lando slowly realise that Luke was actually the prisoner. And I'd say it leads to a pretty good payoff. Throughout this whole time, I was really enjoying Talon Card. His fate has been left open, I'm sure, to later books. I'm hoping he survives. I do quite like him, but he's on Thrawn's bad side, and Thrawn knows about it. So I don't know. I don't think I can see him surviving the next book. But I'll happily be proved wrong. And then to conclude the book, we had the anticipated Battle of Sluis Van, which it was pretty chaotic. I probably would have had a bit more context had I read some of the X-Wing books. I know there was Wedge and some of Rogue Squadron in there. But as a whole, I enjoyed it, especially when Han and Luke showed up in the Falcon. And although it was a small rebel victory, we can tell, and through Thrawn's monologue, that really the winner of this battle, or the book in general, has been the Empire. And Thrawn is very obviously playing the long game here. I mentioned before in the non-spoiler part about how well Zahn balances the tone. I thought particularly it was nice when we had the, you know, genuinely warm and happy moments. Particularly I thought it was nice to see Han and Leia actually interact in their relationship post Return of the Jedi. And now I haven't read The Princess and the Scoundrel, but other than a brief interaction in The Force Awakens, we don't really see them much in canon at all. So it was nice to finally get some Han and Leia content. But to contrast this, we also had some great darker moments. Particularly there was a moment when Thrawn ordered the execution of a young Imperial officer. Now, the result was nothing that we hadn't seen before from the likes of Vader, but the way he went about it was just so different to anything we had seen. I enjoyed how he wanted to deduct the whole situation, and although throughout the interaction Zahn makes you feel bad for this recruit almost, and towards the end of the interaction you think perhaps Thrawn might spare him, but then just ruthlessly he executes him, or gets Rook to do so. And I thought it was a great dark moment, and like I said before, it contrasted other moments of the book perfectly. Now, I don't have many complaints at all for the book. I enjoyed the plot and all of the characters, but there are some small complaints I had towards the third act, and maybe even the second half of the second act. We lose Sabayoff. He's mentioned a few times. I suppose it wouldn't really make sense, and that I'm sure he's going to show up loads in the later two books, but I did wish we got some more of him in the third act. As well of that, we do also kind of lose Leia and Chewie a bit in the third act once they're on Kashyyyk. They kind of show up every now and then, and I kind of wish they were just a bit more involved with the main plot. But yeah, as far as stuff that happened in the book, that's all I have to say. Heir to the Empire, I can't praise it high enough. It's given me exactly what I've been looking for, and exactly what I expected. I saw a lot of videos of people talking about how good the EU is and just how anyone should jump into it. So I did have high expectations, I'm not going to lie, but they were met. I would also like to say that I think I'm going to go back and watch a couple later seasons of Rebels, or maybe even Ahsoka, to see some more Thrawn in canon, because I feel like we do have some scenes of like him being, well, really smart basically in deducting plans. When he first meets Hera comes to mind. But I'd like to see it more in canon, so I'm definitely going to rewatch them to think if there's just some moments that aren't coming to mind. And if you have read the book, let me know what your favourite moments are in the comments. If you're going to read it, I'd love if you'd come back and let me know. Now, this is a new sort of type of video. I haven't really spoke about books before on this channel, but it's something I'm planning to continue doing. I'll either continue with the Thrawn trilogy with Dark Force Rising next, or I also heard Shadows of the Empire is a great book that I could read without having any other sort of knowledge. I could read it at any point, and they've recently had a new audiobook version on the Essentials Legends collection added to Audible. So one of those two I'll read next. If you have any specific that you'd like me to, let me know, or any other books, and I'll add them to my list. If you did enjoy, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. The support means the most to me. And thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you, always.